Hey, this is Huck. If you want to watch this top 3 asshole keep doing esports content, subscribe to Thorin's YouTube channel.
Right, this is going to be episode 14 of Watch the Overture with me and Yiska, and we've got a guest back for this one. It's a recurring guest, but then again, as I always joke about in every episode that has Sideshow on, that's because I actually think Sideshow appears on about 75% of all Overwatch podcasts ever produced, quite frankly. And until that ratio goes down, I'm not sure you can actually say esports was a huge esports game. You know, where's all the guests for the shows? Like, either that or he just says yes to every time, whereas other people go, I'm busy that day, whereas he just goes, yeah, I don't need to look, but yeah, I can just do every show available. Which is it, Sideshow?
Many people owe me favors, and so I pull them in, make sure that my brand's disseminated across the Overwatch scene. You can't go anywhere, watch any video without watching me. That's the aim. That's the end goal anyway.
Sure. I've got to say, though, I do appreciate the way that you, like many other people in the Overwatch scene, did go that classic route where it's like start your own podcast, community-driven, grassroots, a lot of passion behind it. Well, sorry, I've got a job. Fuck this podcast. That's going on the side. Leave that behind. I don't even get paid for that. What are you talking about? And done my day's work. Well, that's my 9 to 5 done. And I'm off home sitting down. What do you mean do a podcast?
Why would you ever run a podcast if you just get able to be invited onto other people's? Like, at some point, it's just
there is a logic to that, I can't lie.
To record your videos. Imagine me having to wrangle Bren into hosting a podcast every week. That is not something I was happy to continue doing.
I won't lie, I do appreciate like the one I do with Richard in CSGO where I'm just like the co-host. Because by the way, a co-host is the biggest scam of all time. It's basically just recurring guest, right? But who doesn't have to do any of the tasks that a host does. Usually, like to be fair, like Yiska does some topics and stuff. Like I have a couple of people who do them, but like when I'm the co-host, put it that way, all I do is like I even have people before who are like, "Oh, have you prepared for the show?" So what the fuck are you talking about? I prepare I turn up and he starts telling me stuff and I say stuff back. Like there you go, problem solved. So anyway. This episode is also not going to be one with a lot of prepared material, but with good reason, which is on the past episodes of Watch the Overture, what we'd evolved the show into largely was we took a guest, we reverse engineered topics from who the guest is, and then we tried to discuss things with people who hopefully in that field are knowledgeable or an expert, or maybe it's even like a team they played for or something, and then we did that. So it was more like streamlined the concepts, but I wanted to do an episode where it was a bit more hypotheticals. It was a bit more like room to go around, because one of the things I found generally is that actually has always been my favorite sort of content, is the sort of stuff where you get someone in the scene and they have to debate, who is the best DPS player. And then crucially, obviously, they're not just going to say, well, this guy has more stats, so he's the best, or, this guy's team won. No, if these people are actually experts, there's so many ways they can go about discussing these things. So obviously, Sideshow, well-known opinionated person in the scene in that sense. So Yiska, what initial points did we have that we could talk about? Because obviously beyond this, there's a lot of leeway in this one to go anywhere on these topics. So what was like a good starting point of the hypothetical did you have?
I think one thing that we can discuss, because it opens up a lot of topics about off-season length and the proficiency of contenders, is actually that something that we discussed before. And the hypothetical goes like this. If there was a tournament played this weekend and every professional team, so that includes Contenders and Overwatch League, was to participate, who would most likely win it?
So technically we're asking who is the best team in the world right now, if everyone was playing. So obviously at the moment Overwatch League teams would be not included because they haven't yet played the next season. So we're just speculating right now. So some of these we're going to have to go off paper rosters, obviously. So it's going to get, there's a lot of room on this one. So I guess the first question to ask would be this, Sideshow. This would be the first sub question. Is in games like League of Legends, it was easy. You used to just go to Korea, find whoever the best Korean team is, and then odds are they are the best team. In fact, people used to just basically call them the number one team in the world, even though, they hadn't necessarily been to a tournament, because the logic was if the region's the best and they're the best of the region, you're at least a placeholder number one.
Yeah.
So the obvious initial question would be this. Should we pick, Sideshow, the team who won the Overwatch League? Should we pick the London Spitfire? Should they be the de facto team that you'd put your money on now to win such a tournament, if it indeed could happen?
I think if you're talking about the Overwatch League teams, if you take the premise that the Overwatch League teams are better than all of the Contenders teams because they're playing at that higher level, then I think it'd be between the London Spitfire and NYXL. They've got the best on paper rosters, probably, like stacked full of really talented Korean players. they end up getting drafted for the Korean World Cup teams because they're the best players in Korea. And I think it would be reasonable to pick either of those rosters, honestly. It just depends on what meta it was being held in. For this one coming up, I mean, maybe. I think personally I would favour the London Spitfire. I consider them kind of the defending champions of OWL. I think they're probably the best team coming back into it once you focus on that 6-man roster and don't have the inconsistencies that they had throughout the season. But NYXL is also good. I think the important factor is if you're just going to do that and pick the defending champion team, you have to take into account the fact that they haven't been playing for ages. They haven't been playing over this off season, and they haven't been playing this meta, and they are probably not going to be as practiced as some of the other teams in the region. So I'm not sure that accepting the premise that all of the Contenders teams are worse than all of the OWL teams is valid to begin.
Well, luckily, within that context, one of the things we can obviously bring in now as well, and Yiska, you could start us with this then, is obviously people will think, as everyone did when the expansion slots were announced, right? Well, surely some of the top teams from Korea Contenders are going to come over, because actually, as much as people would give the nod to Overwatch League, clearly some of the top teams in Contenders Korea, I mean, for a start off, Runaway, just by virtue of the fact they didn't accept the offers to the Overwatch League. I mean, they clearly were Overwatch talent caliber, you know, because they could have been in the Overwatch League indeed. And obviously they have almost entirely moved over to the Vancouver Titans. You've got a couple of other teams. So is Vancouver Titans in this discussion, Yiska? Because surely they would meet the criteria perfectly, right? Of like, they're now in the Overwatch League. They've got all these players that were near the top of Contenders' career. Should teams like that actually, would they for you have a legit stake to potentially being a team that could have won one of these tournaments?
I mean, hypothetically, yes. Though if we're sort of honing in on these probability clouds, if you want, around like the hypothetical went next weekend, I would wager that there's a lot of process just going on currently with Overwatch League teams that bars them maybe from practicing as hard. They don't have their competitions. Didn't make as much sense, even though I'm fairly confident that they've now started. And it was quite interesting to see how sort of like the practice behind the scenes was distributed, because some teams were practicing after the after the season was over for some reason, then took a break, and then now only recently started it up again. So I don't know what the rationale behind these things was, but okay, I'm the first one to admit that scrims don't mean, like, I have a video called "Scrims Mean Jack," right? And I think that the weight we apply to them is probably often too high. But then again, if I just compare what I'm hearing, it's very interesting to see, for instance, that teams are telling me that now that Paris Eternal is in LA, or at least scrimming Overwatch League teams, they actually have very good goats. Now at the same time, European Contenders teams are telling me we're losing like 20% of the maps to Paris Eternal. Now obviously A beats C beats A beats B beats C. It doesn't work that way, right? But at the same time, I wonder just how currently the Contenders teams compare to Overwatch League. It's also, there has been a professionalization of these Contenders teams. And let's also keep in mind, like, for instance, take Philadelphia Fusion, which is probably would be my answer, that the Fusion University currently might just be the strongest team in the world, right? Because they have players that can't be in the Overwatch League with Alarm, and Alarm looks like a top Zen player, even by our standards, right? So we won't know that, but like, it just from the eye text, it looks as such, right?
Yes.
And then, and then it's also that, of course, they're now practiced and everything. I would even go as far as to say that this roster has more talent than some of the Overwatch League rosters overall. Even if I go beyond the scope of just a weekend tournament that's coming up. So here, I think, for instance, Fusion Uni is a good answer. Maybe Giganti is a good answer. Maybe even the new Runaway roster that's going on in with their goats. Even though I think there's a hype. Okay, if I had to commit, I think it probably is a European team, and it probably is Giganti.
Okay, so much to unpack there as well, right? Because within that there is a premise that there has always been this kind of respect around the Korean Contenders scene, that it's the best of the Contenders regions, and if a team's able to get to the top of Contenders Korea, then it's probably the best team that's in Contenders in the world. I'm not sure that necessarily still applies. I think there are arguments for Giganti, maybe British Hurricane, and the Fusion Academy as well. I think once you get below those, I think it drops off quite a lot within the other two regions. But actually, when I was watching those games as well, if we're ignoring the Owl teams as well, who I reckon could come in and clap these guys with little practice as well. Like, honestly, like someone like NYXL or London, I think they wouldn't really have to be honing the meta for that long before they get really comfortable with it. But I think if you're talking about the NA Academy team, Fusion University, being on the level that's better than the Korean Contenders teams or the top European teams as well, they were making a number of mistakes and chokes within their match against Atlanta Academy, a team that really shouldn't be in the conversation for one of the best teams given the amount of mistakes that they were making. And I think the eye test when you're watching that NA finals, there's a lot of individual talent on Fusion Academy, but I don't think that they were playing like one of the best teams in the world. I think when you look at how Runaway were playing, the new Runaway that is, not the Vancouver Titans, I think they were playing pretty well. I think between them and Giganti, you'd have a really good match if it was GOATs. But also, so I think I would personally discount the North American Contenders scene as being the weakest of the three in terms of the overall level, just by watching them play and seeing what their teamwork was like. But I can see the argument for Giganti or for New Runaway, which is madness, by the way, that New Runaway would even be in this conversation, because they're all like scrub talents a couple of months ago. So that's just incredible work from the Runaway organization. But even then, right, you've got NYXL and the London Spitfire and other top teams like the Shock or the Fusion or stuff like that. These teams have actually been practicing for a while now and still don't really get that rusty over the course of the off season. These guys are still working on their individual mechanics. They're having to play show matches occasionally. They have to stay reasonably up to the top of their game. Otherwise, they'll get overtaken by these expansion teams. And their level of ability and their level of experience is so much higher than these players. Like, if there was a situation in which Giganti or New Runaway or something were the best team in the world legitimately this weekend, or Fusion Uni, I think you would see way more of these cores be brought over. Like, somebody's got to be trying this stuff out when they're looking at Owl trials, and they still went for this kind of combined approach where they feel like they can do better. So that seems to indicate that when they're trialing these players, they're not just getting stomped by Contenders teams.
I think it indicates that trials generally are pretty poor in terms of a scouting method and how they are conducted in Overwatch League generally. I think while I definitely agree that just by the mere fact that we have so many teams and just it's very unlikely that a top level talent will not be taken on by some team. I still think the quality of scouting is fairly low, and I think there are still quality players out there. I, for instance, think Davin could definitely be a starter for a Western Overwatch League team. I also think that I could probably, on top of my head, just name like 5 players that should be replaced by him. Yet we don't see that really, because for some reason he's not performing in trials as much, even though where he is performing is in actual tournaments where he has now won 2 Contenders seasons for himself, both times arguably being the MVP of the series.
But I mean, the guys that he's playing alongside are people like Zappis and Zuppe. Was Manitin playing as well for Giganti this season? No, I don't. It was
Manitin on Florida.
French guys.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so he's playing alongside guys like Zappis and Zuppe, who actually looked like they were playing pretty decently within that team. I don't think this is the kind of talent that when you would like the
in a triple tank meta,
that would end up being like one of the best in the world if you actually put it to the test. I think the issue is that with the Overwatch League teams not practicing, you can't visually see the gulf between where these teams are playing. Now, an interesting case, though, where people have argued against my point is Eagle Gaming. This team, when the World Cup was going around, everyone was going mad for this team from European Contenders that ended up winning it, saying that they were the best GOATs team in the world and nobody could touch them and stuff like this. And some of the Owl players that were scrimming against them with their World Cup teams were like, these guys are fucking incredible. How would you ever be able to beat them? But also at that point there were no OWL teams scrimming, and so they were comparing them to their World Cup level, and I think World Cup is comparable or maybe slightly less than Contenders. So I think sometimes when people are playing against these Contenders teams, they tend to think that they are because they've refined a certain meta so much and you're coming into it fresh, they can initially feel like they're unbeatable. But I think if you, even over the course of a tournament, if it wasn't knockout and you weren't matched up with them immediately, I still think like the overwhelming ability of some of these guys and the experience behind them and the coaching staff that they have would be able to overcome.
Eventually, yeah.
So wait a minute. If we accepted the premise just for a moment, just for fun, that indeed the best Overwatch World Cup teams are better than Contenders teams, does that mean that Team UK is better than all of North American Contenders? Sideshow, take it away.
Team UK better than all of North American Contenders. Do you know what? Yeah, it definitely is. Team UK may actually be the greatest team ever assembled, and the only reason they went out is because Bren thought that they were going to win and cursed them on the deck. Actually, the only reason. No, but genuinely, people overrate the World Cup performance as well. I think fans really have to like think about how they're modeling these different levels of play because they don't have interactions between them. And so you really have to look at the eye test and see how the communication and teamwork is working, and look at how the decision making is happening. And it seems like the top level of World Cup is slightly below the top level of Contenders if you just look at like the respective regions. For example, Runaway beat the South Korean team. Eagle Gaming was slamming some of the World Cup teams that came over to France. So even though the Korean World Cup team looked like a super team and could actually be a good team if you spent some time with them, if you just throw a roster like that together, it's not even as good as the top Contenders teams. And there is an assumption that the OWL teams are even better because when the OWL teams are scrimming against Contenders teams over the course of the regular season, they're dunking on them. So the advantage to like your hypothetical where there's a one-off tournament, I think it would have to be like just at the right time where a Contenders team has worked on this meta that the Overwatch League teams haven't had the chance to and really like found something perfect that worked for them. Like if Sparkle's Doomfist in the GOATs had ended up being some unbeatable strategy, like maybe they could have been the best team in the world. Like if some team finds a really niche strategy over the course of Contenders and the OWL teams aren't playing that meta or they were a patch behind, fair enough, but I don't think that's going to be the case.
Yeah, it's quite interesting to see just how like sources within the Overwatch League, like coaches basically say that when they started scrimming, it was almost a waste to scrim Overwatch League teams and not Contenders teams, especially if you could get scrims with the good ones, simply because it's like the boosters that you have to get the rocket into space, right? Like that's like they have such a knowledge gap towards like, you know, rested Overwatch League players that haven't maybe even touched the game in a while, that they then just learn GOATs from them and then blaze past. And that's also why a lot of people are saying right now that Paris Eternal, for instance, is doing very well in GOATs.
Right. I have one question on this topic, and then maybe we'll move to another one and pick another hypothetical. So this might sound like a ridiculous concept, but I'm going to ask it, Sideshow, just because logically you can build a case as to why this wouldn't be impossible, right? So don't immediately dismiss out of hand what I'm about to say. So the question I was going to ask was this, Sideshow, is it possible that one of the teams in the Chinese Contenders, let me finish, could actually have been very good? Because the reason that I would give, right, as to why it's at least a question worth asking is because obviously there only was one team in the Overwatch League that had Chinese players. Even then, people already understand that those were not necessarily the best Chinese players. And if you just look at the circumstances, Koreans have extra reasons as to why you might recruit one who isn't even fluent in English. But at the moment, there is not really any market to recruit Chinese players that don't speak English to teams that aren't going to be all Chinese or Chinese and Korean. At the moment, it's just like, basically my point is that the market's so bad that even if the best player in the world was Chinese in Overwatch, we might not know it. Like in theory, he'd only be over in, you know, Contenders China or whatever they call that. Yeah. So were the teams that were at the top in China, were any of them actually looking like, again, using the eye test, using whatever relative to whatever meta it was, did any of them look like they were good? Would they even be in a conversation like this?
Unfortunately, no. And I think there's some good reasons for that as well that are quite interesting. So I think it's a good question. And I think it comes down to the difference between when you have talent dispersed over a bunch of different teams and talent that is it's really prolific. So China doesn't have that much talent that's really at that kind of top level, but you could make a Chinese super team that was at that level. And I think Team China tried to do that. So I think Team China was better than the Chinese Contenders teams, which is unusual for one of these reasons. For one of these regions, it was kind of flipped over. And I don't think that would really apply to anywhere else. I can't think of any other region where the World Cup team is better.
That's actually a very similar trend to other esports games, actually. Basically, in League of Legends, for a long time, that was the case. It's like, you know, like if, like, put it this way, if I'd have been tasked like a World Cup type team to like make the best Chinese League of Legends players into one team and then have them go against Korea, I could have made a team that could have won you Worlds or something like that years ago. But the point is, the way their industry tends to work, like, cause they are so active in scouting people when they're young, they sign people to long contracts. It's also actually just socially looked down upon to, like, you know, in the West, people understand the business part of sport, which is like, you know, even if you were like a beloved player of a team, if you get like a way better offer from the rival team, you can go there. You know, it's not the end of the world anymore, like it might have been 30 years ago. In China, that sort of thing is like way more looked down upon. So there are a lot of like weird external reasons why I've noticed in their esports games, it's more that like talent spreads out across the league, actually. Partly because probably when they were recruited, they weren't known as being that good yet. It's like a scattershot approach, you know, like they're all going to get through eventually, but no one knew that these players were being put together for a reason, sort of.
Yeah, I think also their coaching staff is way worse than a lot of other regions in China at the moment. And so they just lack the ability to put together these really good teams. I think it might not be quite the same as League of Legends, where they're trying to scout early and they're actually actively trying to do things that will favor them in the long term. I think that some of the Chinese teams look like they were put together just by picking names out of a hat. They're really like poor decision making based. Well, I mean, we saw it with Shanghai Dragons as well, right? It was like corruption allegations aside or whatever in terms of how the team was actually assembled, they were put together very poorly and didn't even pick the best players for their roles. And I fear that the same thing is going to happen with Chengdu as well, who've made a full Chinese roster for Overwatch League 2019, because again, for whatever reason, they weren't able to pick up the star players that have ended up going to some of the other teams, like Hangzhou and Guangzhou picked up a couple. Maybe they didn't offer enough or whatever, you know, but Chengdu have otherwise probably not even picked up the best of the rest of the pack. And so there's something weird going on with China where they can't seem to get like the best players into their positions. So they'll never really be at the level in Contenders, I think, before that is solved, where they'll be able to be like one of the top regions, because they just disperse it out everywhere and it's a mess. Nobody can really learn from each other when you have that system as well. And you don't get the nice natural selection of an ecosystem with promotion and relegation, which OWL doesn't benefit from this like natural selection process, but Contenders does, which is why it can produce teams that are better than OWL, is because if you're good, you succeed. If you're bad, you drop out. There's constant pressure to evolve your team and make it better and better. So in theory, you can keep developing even though your talent gets ripped away. But in China, this just doesn't happen because they don't even have they can't make the right mutations. They just keep fucking up their teams.
I mean, it's not just that. It's also it feels like we're holding our breath, or the Chinese community is, for the second team that's finally a tactical team after Miraculous Youngsters. Like, these guys were the absolute antithetical Chinese team, and in terms of what kind of rules they succeed by, right? They had like a lot of off-meta strategic variations that they would run, would be very flexible. And I'm not an expert on China per se, but I still think, at least in the quality of Miraculous Youngsters, we haven't seen anything like that from China again. So, which is, of course, also, it's hard to assemble that team again after such a long time. Are they still, good players? It's also, there's still age limitations, as crazy as that is, with Leaf still not being of age. So it's interesting how that scene could develop if maybe all it takes, and basically all it took also for Western players, to be fair, is a Korean coach that whips them into shape.
If we look over season 1 of the Overwatch League, I think that generally most people did agree with the consensus that like if you had to pick like an MVP or the best player, the most important player, it was Jornak from the NYXL. I think the only real arguments I saw that were like vaguely plausible was you could maybe say Carpe from Philadelphia Fusion was very good as well, but that's about it. Like most other cases, you know, there was too many stages, like you had to keep the consistency level up, your team probably had to be relevant at some point in time. You know, these are all things that tend to play into being called the best player. Who will be the next best player in the world in Overwatch? Who will next take that title? Because obviously for this one now, it could be a player who's not in the Overwatch League. If you think there's someone really sick coming in, there's a few names coming in you've got to throw in the mix, right?
I think,
and it can be an Overwatch League player, of course, as well.
Yeah, I think Yiska would tell you that it'll be Profit 2 times over for 2018 and 2019, but the man's an unabashed fanboy.
You're not wrong.
I think that's a really interesting one. The reason that I thought Jornak really took it is that he changed the way that people thought about the Zen position being played. Like the team really was built around him. And in the same way that we've seen Miro reinvent the main tank play with Winston in the past, and then Jaehong reinvent how Anna was played as a much more like offensive playmaking support, I think Jornak did a similar thing to like thinking about how a team could be built around a Zenyatta and force dives onto the enemy team. And like just you're setting up positioning and just being a very reactive player. So I'm just wondering which kind of players that would come into it have the ability to break the game in that kind of way. Obviously people like Gesture or Mano or Profit, these guys who are just going to be super stable and super good all year round, I think are decent candidates. I can't really think of someone who's literally like going to be in that kind of relevant team but break the game. There doesn't really seem to be an ability for that to happen again, but then we would have said that last time as well. So
I'll put a name forwards and let me see what you think, right? So based on what, we discussed this guy a few episodes back, but one of the reasons people are excited to see the new Seoul Dynasty lineup play is because obviously part of what crushed everyone about Seoul Dynasty being so bad was that it coincided with Ryu Jaehong being so bad, and he himself once upon a time occupied this title for many people. And obviously after seeing how badly he played in the Overwatch League, while he was obviously amazing on like Anna, for example, when he was in Apex, it clearly wasn't even just his mechanical skill. Like people did factor in like he seemingly was like a shot caller and was, you know, all the intangibles were there for him as well. I think that's why he had such elevated status before the Overwatch League. So when his team was bad, obviously none of that was present, and individually he looked bad. Well, along these lines, Yiska, would you not say we have to at least consider what was the name of that guy who joined now? Jiska or something was called, right? What was that new player? That support? Jackson, there you go. What about him then? Wasn't he someone who was like potentially molded in that vein to be like some god tier shot caller type character who knows what's going on?
Sure. The problem with that is, if we're talking about best player, it seems like it's always very much skewed towards having on-server performance. And the problem is that most of the Jax's input would probably come from intangibles. They're just hard to prove and then also compare to everyone. Like, how would you do that? If that transformation, of course, works, yeah, but even then, I think experts might be inclined to give a trophy like that to an in-game leader. Most of the time, though, how often is the in-game leader perceived to be the MVP of any esports historically, sure, right? So, while that might be the case, or actually, like if we had like this truth machine that told us, okay, who's the most valuable player by value, like win percentage, if you put him on a team or whatever, it might be Jax. I think it's unlikely that we're going to see ever, possibly, if the main support role stays as such, because it's not mechanically demanding enough, that we will see a best player in the world candidate from that specific role.
Now that I've had a couple of minutes to think about it, I could throw some names out for you as well that I think have legitimate shots to be able to in the future. I think one that plays on your point there, Thorin, of like having something extra to the role where it relies on you being a shot caller or a leading figure for your team, but also isn't quite the main support, where it's hard to see what you're doing if you're playing Mercy or, to some extent, Lucio as well. I think is Badoshin. Badoshin was the shot caller for the London Spitfire once Closer was removed from the team and took them to that incredible playoffs run towards the end of the season, has been the second best Zen, second best flex support throughout the entirety of 2018. If London end up doing really well next year and continue this kind of stellar play that we've seen from them so far in their peaks in 2018. I think you could give a lot of the credit to Bedoshin, the way that he calls the team, and also his play. There are a bunch of MVP caliber people on this team. I think Prophet, Gesture, Fury as well, and Bedoshin, but you definitely have to put him up there because he's supposed to be the main caller and leadership figure for the London Spitfire. So if they continue outputting insane performances, then he's got to be up there, despite the fact that we've kind of already had our Zen MVP in Jonak.
I mean, it's interesting that I think one could argue if Ru Jae-hong was indeed the best player of that year, but ever since Overwatch went sort of professional, it has always been flex supports that were like the standout players, right? Like even if you don't say Ru Jae-hong, you maybe have to say Anko, or you have to say depending on how high you value those cups before, and possibly even Chip Cyan. It's crazy how stacked these positions are in that regard, and maybe that's more true for Ana because it's flashier and it does something to the brain where it sticks more. But generally, I think flex support are in a quite good position. And I also tend to think that they might just be the most impactful position in Overwatch overall. Like, for instance, Winston Slab and Baroy had like a ratio back in the day. And he called it like the golden ratio, where based on the performance of the Zenyatta, you could almost perfectly map the final position in the league standings based on that. So NYXL was first, Jonak was the best, right? Then, of course, it somehow broke together when London sort of shit the bed in the last stage, I think, where they lost the second spot or whatever. That, I mean, Neko was up there. Like, if you didn't have a great main support as a flex support, it was sort of hard to get into playoffs. And for the one team where it didn't have to be the case, I would argue was probably Boombox, who was like an average Zen in the Overwatch League. And that was this archetype of a DPS carry team, like we've seen with KDP in the past, where that can sometimes work, that a team is carried by their DPS players. So
another big thing about that PTK model that Barrow would go on about so much, though, was that the tanks were super important, right? It was like the DPS aren't the most important thing. It's your flex support has to be big and your main tank. And I don't think any team has ever been good without a really capable main tank.
Yeah.
And apart from Miro, and you know, people were making noises about Gesture and Mano last season as well. As part of the MVP discussion, and Fisher as well, of course. Sure. But they weren't really given the same kind of credit, I think. I think this might be the year where the main tanks and the off tanks, depending on how much D.Va has really taken a hit, whether you can still be like a superstar D.Va player. I haven't really seen the PTR scrims where she's been nerfed, but I don't think it'll make too much of a difference. I'd be really looking at people like Fury on his D.Va and Gesture and Mano, and maybe even newcomers like Bumper or Gushui as well, who could potentially make like ridiculous performances, because the Primal Rage is just such a fun ultimate to watch and can have crazy carry potential. It's such a pivotal role. Like if you slip up, you've just ruined it for your team, and it's so much of the core foundation of how teams work. I think we could be in for a main tank who ends up being MVP this year.
Because obviously one of the factors that we have to take into account for this one, like I alluded to, is unfortunately your team is going to have to be one of the better teams. Like it's just very difficult to get called the best player. So actually, even if we consider that aspect, so I'll give you an example. If you wanted to pick someone who obviously was nowhere close to being the best player in the whole Overwatch League, but had legit potential when they came in, I would pick Space from the LA Valiant. But his problem is his team hasn't really done many upgrades in the off season. They don't look like they're going to be the best team. It's going to be hard to establish yourself as the best player, as very good tank, but where's the front line for a start off? So
yeah, he can fight
hard
for
work that way.
He can fight for best Western player. Maybe it's a less competitive role in the Overwatch League.
I would say though that especially in the case of D.Va players, I feel it's incredibly hard to rate them because or there are then again reasons why that is the case. For instance, some D.Va players are just mandated by their or told by their coach to do a specific thing, and they look pretty one-dimensional because of that. And you wouldn't ever find out. Maybe he's just great at that one star, whatever it is, right? But it's also like the ability almost, or the read you have to have on the game to understand all the intangible values that a D.Va has to consider, are increasingly hard. And also, if you just, I think there hasn't been a role where there was such a variety of high quality opinions on who the best are in the league. So a lot of people seem to think Fury was like the best D.Va. I talked to Overwatch League divas who told me he's a W bot. He's actually not that good. Now, of course, that is...
Wasn't he the one, though, where, like, even the Korean commentators or something were just raving about him? Like, he's incredible, like, with the things he can do.
I think that was at the World Cup, actually, because people were able to have access to the viewer, which changes things massively in terms of your ability to analyze people. And people really looked at the D.Va players because normally in a fight, you just can't tell what they're doing. It's just impossible. Like the defense matrix is some wispy little line that you have to try and keep track of what they're doing. Like it's not possible. I think Fury's individual mechanics are nuts. Some of the stuff that he pulls off, like the eats that he manages to get a read on, or like some weird stuff that people were showing where he's fighting against a Hanzo and he's literally doing 180s, predicting every time they're going to try and shoot him so that he doesn't get headshot and instead it hits his back and just carries on like flying towards them. Like this guy's like...
That's pretty legit, I can't lie.
Yeah, just like banana.
That's like something out of a fucking Nicolas Cage movie or something where he's just got the ability to do that, like do 180s.
Yeah.
It's actually crazy. But that's the kind of stuff that you couldn't really see him do in the season. And I think as well... My opinion was, during the regular season, Mecca was a better off-tank. I think he worked better with the NYXL system, and I think Fury didn't really have the synergy developed that well throughout the regular season of 2018. There were times where he just wasn't supporting Gesture properly, but in the playoffs, he was just an absolute monster, and I think that he definitely deserved the title of the best off-tank, because he was also playing like Roadhog and Zarya and stuff like that to a really nuts level. But you need that viewer to be able to tell what the hell a D was doing, because the hero's just madness.
I will say, by the way, along those lines, that's one area I feel I actually just pity people who work in Overwatch, unfortunately, because I can tell you in Counter-Strike, in the old days of Counter-Strike, that was the main way I used to study players, is I would just get like 50 games that they played in, and in the viewer that we had there, HLTV, you could just pick the player you wanted to view, and I would just watch just that player play for like, I wouldn't go through like necessarily all 50 VODs unless I was going like really ham, but if you got like the right 10 demos, I always used to say, you'd pretty much know the player, you'd know like his tendencies, like, what type of opponents does he do certain things against, what's his general playing style. You'll even be able to give a pretty good like sort of rundown of his skill set, uses these techniques, skilled in this area. And I have to say, in CSGO, where in theory you can still get demos like that, but mostly we're just watching the tournament game, and so I'm only really seeing it when the observer's on the guy, or he does a big play, or I see his name pop up on the kill feed. When I was viewing the game exclusively that way, I did find it got way harder to know any of those things, like what someone's at. It gets so much harder. Like, believe it or not, you can't just look at the number of kills and say who the better mechanical player is. Like a lot of the things you might think would translate through stats didn't really, I have to say. And in fact, the reason why I know this is bizarre, because what reminded me of it was there was a player where I hadn't watched him as much, and I went and did this, and I was like, holy shit, this guy's actually amazing. Like, he's way better than I thought. Like, because his team wasn't the best, I thought, there's no way this guy could be like one of the best players. But I found he legit was like legit one of the best players in the world, even if he wasn't one of the best teams. So yeah, I guess it does make this topic a tougher one to discuss, because a lot of it is just being skewed by like for example, whenever everyone lists off all those sick main tanks, it's like, come on, what are the odds that so just the best main tanks also coincidentally just the best teams in the Overwatch League? Well, that's convenient as fucking. Yeah. And remember, these are the same teams where people will tell you by the same logic that they've also got all the best DPS players. So it's like either Overwatch is such a fucking bad game that only the best players can win the game, or we're missing something here. Like, there's a lot of like blurred lines, or it's hard to know who is better, because you can't extract them from the context of the team.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of that is the case. I mean, I've been watching VODs to prepare for Overwatch League and looking at a lot of these new rookie players. I've been doing it occasionally with like Yiska and some of the other people. And we're sat watching this thing and the observers are just on this. And in the distance, behind 3 different walls, you can see the outline of the player that you're trying to study. And you're like, I wonder what he's doing over there.
Is he doing a good job there?
Yeah, exactly. And then you just have to like pray that he comes back into the fight so you can tell what he's doing and make some intelligent judgments about his decision making, because otherwise, I mean, you're just staring at a little blur in the corner of the screen.
Now imagine,
it does make it difficult.
Now imagine doing that for 20 individuals over the regular season with like hundreds of games to study, where like if you want to evaluate tanks, it will be so hard to get like an expert that has studied all of these and then to, vocalize that to wider community, because at that point you might as well be an Overwatch League coach, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What about this then? So obviously we can pick people who are in Overwatch Season 1. So for example, an obvious example to me would be pick someone who their team wasn't good enough last season for them to be in this position, but they might be now. So like, who would fit that bill for you? Like who already was really good but didn't have the team for it?
Oh, maybe Striker could be able to do this, honestly, because the guy was nutty when he was playing for the Boston Uprising. And yes, they did finish 3rd place, but people don't really have him in that conversation overall because he was pretty much only playing Tracer for the entire season, and they flopped in the playoffs. What did they come, like 4th, 5th overall, or 5th, 6th? I don't exactly remember. Yeah. But it was a really great performance from this guy, and he was able to transition onto a couple of other heroes as the season went on. He played a bit of Junkrat, played a bit of Widow. I think he played Hanzo at some point as well. So if San Francisco Shock end up being as good as people are anticipating them to be, and Striker is a large component of that, and he shows us more than just his insane Tracer, and it's at that level. These are all potential, like, all the situation is building Striker up, where now, as long as he performs to the level that we would expect based on his previous performance, he could be in there for an MVP candidate.
Yeah. It's that almost, like, that discussion always triggers me, is when, like, well, he's really just a Tracer one trick. The problem is you could interpret it that way, and that could be the data. Or it could be he was one of the best, if not the best, at the one pick that was relevant for him. Yeah. And then when there was another pick that became relevant for him, he picked it up very quickly and was serviceable against people who were doing it full time. So the analysis can be that you say, okay, he only has 2 picks, which is needlessly limited. I think the analysis should be, this guy can work himself, grind himself into a position where so far, whatever pick you give him, he becomes serviceable or top level at it.
Yeah. And we've seen this with Tracer players in the past. It seems to be the one role where people, because it's so fast paced and because it requires a lot of aim and because you have to be thinking about a million things at once, and it was kind of a real carry role. If you got to the top level as Tracer, you can probably pick up a bunch of other heroes and be really good at it. Effect, I think, is another person that if the Dallas Fuel end up being really strong and he's mentally strong and he can get back in with this team, we've seen that this guy can be like one of the best DPS players in the world when Dallas were on all cylinders. And if the rest of his team can step up around him and he drops this like carry mentality and actually plays with the rest of his team, this guy could be a nut. He could be one of, if not the best DPS player we've ever seen, actually. I think he has that kind of potential to be at that top level. He hasn't proven it in a long time, so it's a bit of a punt, but I think Effect could be up there.
I think also we can go back to San Francisco Shock and say maybe Architect is one of those guys, because Architect is like, okay, so this guy goes way back, right? And already in Apex Season 2, people were saying he was going to be this 3rd best game, like would make the trifecta of Haksal, Who Are You, and Architect. His blade usage was, in terms of mere statistics and what he could do with it, was nuts. Okay, so Who Are You could mesmerize you with these, anti-Pharah situations. Architect was super clinical with them. Then he just transitions, and at some point, for some reason, nobody really is interested that much into him, and Shock picks him up. And this guy has a Widow somehow and is one of the best dueling Widows in the Overwatch League. Now you have a guy that has shown it on both spectrums of the DPS pool, namely the projectile and hit scan DPS. So I wonder if we keep Genji in mind, if we keep his Widow in mind, what else he could bring to the table. Also now powered with a star-studded team, I have to say. Because, again, scrims don't mean much, but my chickens, mate, like, I've heard very good feedback so far from San Francisco Shock that they are nuts in scrims. Like it is actually an unfair spoil of riches that they have in their roster, and the DPS they could play. Paid for what?
They paid for everything. Like it's one thing to be like, oh, it's unfair. They're stacked with talent. Yeah, they got the checkbook out. If you want a team that's as good as that, pay for it.
Yeah,
I want to. Obviously, you got to mention Kappa and EQO as well. I think those guys were nuts. They were potentially the best DPS. I think they were the best DPS duo that we had in the league, because people like Birdring didn't really step up until playoffs for a while. And either one of them.
Plus, I'll even throw this in there to make the case for them even further, Sideshow. So people might immediately go, oh, wait a minute, and then start bringing up NYXL players. But it's like I said earlier, if you acknowledge that the best player in all of Overwatch is the fucking Zenyatta player of the NYXL, then I imagine on a team like them that loves to fucking turtle, I'd like to be a DPS player on that team as well, thank you, and just sit on the edge fucking killing everyone while my Zen kills you. How much more space do you have to operate than the other guy? Like, put it this way, it's a lot harder to be the DPS on the Shanghai Dragons, isn't it, where you've got nothing, just nothing behind you.
Exactly. That's why it was so impressive.
It's not a fair fight.
All right. It's brutal, right? Just to take a tangent for a moment, Ado had that last season where he's on the Shanghai Dragons, and the poor lad, we've seen like he's okay when he played in Korea in the past. He looked promising. He comes on Shanghai, occasionally has some like good Dragon Blades. The guy looks like he's still got that talent, but obviously his team's just too much of a dead weight for him to be able to carry alone. He's only an upcoming rookie player. So you're like, okay, 2019, they've got rid of him. What team's he going to be on?
Most lackluster lineup.
It's happened again. It's happened again. Bless his little heart. I think this is a disappointing one for him this season. Unfortunately, he won't be in a position to be able to do that. But I think on the flip side of this hypothetical are a bunch of names that people will be throwing out if they're listening to this, and I think are mad wrong.
Come on,
like, for example, people have hard-ons for some of the old guard people like Jaehong. I think is going to be washed.
There's people who still believe in Ryu Jaehong.
Genuinely,
there's still people.
I think Jaehong is going to be 2019's Miro. I think he's going to be done by the end of the season, honestly.
Even Jaehong doesn't believe in fucking Jaehong. Come on, just give it up. Even he doesn't believe. And as soon as he stops believing, you can just give it up. Just end that already.
Are there any Tvic fans out there who still believe in the resurgence? I don't think that's going to happen. Honestly, as much as I love it and would love to see it, I don't think Old Moo is a real thing either. I think you've just put old at the beginning of his name and attached a lot of hope to him. That's not going to make him play really well. I think even if Dallas are performing at all cylinders, I think AKM is a better pick for the majority of the heroes at the time who has, and I can't see him returning to that kind of MVP
Sideshow,
form.
If indeed the Seoul Dynasty is a better team, then in some ways, is it now when you need to put your money where your mouth is regarding Fleta?
Do you think the Seoul Dynasty is still going to be
I'm
a
not
top
saying
team?
they are, but I'm just saying if they've even got a competent team, at that point he has to take over if he ever really was the best player. You know, he's got to show us. Now he's got a slightly better team, hopefully.
That's true, but I mean, the weird thing is the amount of talented flex DPS players that have come into the league, or the amount that have actually developed. Fleta no longer looks like he even has the potential to be able to be the best, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, I agree that at one point he did, but now when you have guys like Architect, EQO, I mean, maybe like you could point at somebody like Ivy coming into the league. You still have Profit firing on all cylinders. Who else is a nuts flex DPS?
Decay, possibly.
What's
you want to mention him? Decay.
Oh, Decay, yeah. I mean, he's up there as well. Fleta just doesn't seem to have that same level of pop. Like he does. He was playing pretty passively. He wasn't really trying to be the carry player. I don't think that he is in a potential to be an MVP candidate for 2019 unless he changes his play style now that the rest of the team's like playing more aggressively or something. I don't know. I wasn't really impressed with him in 2018. I felt like he always was on the edge of it, but now he's just surrounded by other talent that is as good as he has the potential to be. So he's not really going to stand out, even if he does become the player that he was always destined to be. He's just going to be really good.
Yeah.
Well, if Sideshow insists, Yiska, on bringing up fan favourites to shoot down and therefore make the viewers hate him, and there's a couple of other names we should at least discuss here, right? Because again, fans might be thinking this name and might think, why haven't they mentioned him? So the two that come to mind is going to be Show4 and Soon, because these are two big fan favourite players, two Western players who had times at Overwatch League Season 1 they looked pretty good, you know, either with Pop in the case of Zoom or Soon, or towards the end, I think particularly when Fisher wasn't in the lineup, people were very impressed with Show4 in the latter stages. So would either of these players, is it plausible? I mean, obviously Soon's just changed the environment. He's got a bunch of French people around him again. He doesn't have the most fucking boring coaching style of all time. He might actually be able to get some pop-offs now, Is the dream possible? Could it happen?
I think I was actually having a conversation with a guy called Formation recently with a piece that he's doing about Show4, and it was about like one of the best Western players. And I said, I think Soon historically has been the best Western player. When you look back at his achievements over time, the guy hasn't, like, occasionally he's been like a Tracer One trick. Sure. Occasionally he's been like not that flashy in the most recent season, but he keeps putting up results and he shows that he can play on like a really top team. But I don't think he's an MVP candidate because I don't think he has that ceiling. I think he's just a really good team player. I think he adds a lot to the mix. Right. But what he was able to achieve on the LA Valiant, I think, is probably about what you should expect from him again.
This is like reading from my answer to this guy's question as well. Okay. I also think that Soon probably, if you rate the Apex days and these, if you still rate them and you don't overvalue Overwatch League, I think you still have to give it to Soon just because what they did with Rogue, right? But I personally think Shofar is a very interesting case study to just look at, because I think almost, and that is super weird because he is one of the players with the most fame behind them in Overwatch. I think he might be underrated. Like, if you just look at his statistical output, it is pretty nuts, to be honest.
It is, yeah, he's really good.
And also, it's not like he's hogging resources, in my opinion. I think the boost that he got by having Fissure on the team was more than just what you would expect a DPS to have by getting a better main tank than iRemix. I think what happened was he was like, oh shit, I'm not the best player by far on my team anymore. Let's level up. And he can do that. And Shofar also has, over the history of the game, had a super wide hero pool, though I'm not confident he could, use that any given weekend. I think he's someone that very much needs to grind into being very proficient on these couple of picks that he has. But what a treat to have as a coach. You just say at the start of the season, okay, you will play Widow and you will play Tracer, go. And then he becomes like a top 10%, that doesn't make sense. Let's say a top third performer on these picks in the Overwatch League. I think if you're talking about best DPS player of all time in the Western context, the problem for Shofar really is that he has never really won big trophies. And much of it is that he was born on the wrong continent for that.
Yeah, I also think that even if Shofar does continue to improve, as I think he will, I don't think we've seen the height of this guy. I don't think he's going to be in with an MVP level performance, but I think that's partly because of his role. Like, I'm going to give a boon to the fans here. I actually do think that he could be in for an award if we had an award for the best secondary DPS player on a team. I think he's a fantastic, like, supportive DPS player, can fill in whatever you, the star player, don't want to play or aren't as comfortable with. He can play all of those different roles. He can occasionally carry if he has to, but he's not somebody that you're going to put a load of resources in and expect him to, like, obliterate the enemy team. But he's always going to be there putting up very solid numbers. And I think apart from the duos that are just stupidly good, like Carpe and EQO, where there isn't really a secondary DPS, I think Shofar should be up there. And I hope that Decay can live up to the hype of being that primary carry DPS so that Shofar can continue to, like, really put up numbers alongside him. And we have a deadly DPS duo. But there's still quite a bit of room for the Gladiators experiment to go wrong, I think. But if that does happen, Shofar's got a good chance of being up there and really getting a lot of respect next year. But I don't think that respect is going to equate to an MVP level performance. I think he's just going to be like one of those really, really good role players that the experts and the fans are like, I am so glad this guy was on my team because he was such a boon, even though you can't say that he was maybe even the second best player on the team. He might end up being like the third best player on the team, but actually one of the most important because he would be irreplaceable by almost anybody else.
Yeah.
In light of what Yiska did there to frame it, that he thinks Shofar was actually underrated, what about this then? Who is the most underrated player on all the OWL rosters? Pick out like one or two or three players. Like, let's get some names going. Who is like undervalued? Like, either that maybe they haven't had a chance to prove themselves, maybe they are coming from another region, maybe they're just really good, they were on a bad team. There's a million different ways you could cut this one up. So who comes to mind immediately?
Immediately, what comes to mind is a guy called Ivy, and in general, the Toronto Defiance pickups, because I've been looking into them quite a lot, and I had a coach and analyst called Dreamcast who's just been chewing my ear off with how good he thinks this guy called Ivy is. And he's really...
Just to be clear, the pronunciation Dreamcast. He said Dreamcast.
Yes. Dreamcast.
Just want to make sure there, Sideshow, that if someone could have misheard the end of that sentence, I might have been worried as to who your connections were. But never mind. Continue. Yes. Okay. So why did this guy impress you so much? I mean, obviously people will have seen him in Korea when he's played for the O2 Ardent team, but why is he popping off the page for you?
Well, he's not so much popping off the page for me, but this guy is really super sold on him, and I respect his opinion as well. So I've gone back through the VODs, and I am fairly impressed with him. And I think the fact that he's very flexible and makes very intelligent decisions, and yet still has such a high level of mechanical skill across a bunch of different heroes, he's like classic projectile player, but can also flex onto Sombra and Tracer. So he's got a pretty wide hero pool. His Genji's really good, his Pharah's very good, his Junkrat's very good. So he's got all of the classics that you would expect. And I think the reason that I would put him in the thing of underrated players is I'm not sure that many people are really aware of him. A lot of people are sleeping on the Toronto Defiant as just a bunch of Contenders players.
Yeah.
And I think he might impress people. Even if the Defiant don't do well, Ivy might still impress.
I will say, if you look at media around teams from Korea, you would really get the sense that every Korea Contenders was just Element Mystic versus Runway. You would have thought that was the final every time. There's the only two teams everyone talked about. You're right.
That's true.
Considering they had won the finals, they just cruised right under the radar. It's kind of wild.
Yeah. They came out with a big upset over Element Mystic and crushed me when I was watching it in what a disastrous 5-game series for Element Mystic. But you're right, they didn't really have any hype around them because no one was expecting them to win that quarterfinal, I think it was. And so from there, when they won the semis, everyone was just like, yeah, okay, I guess they're good. But they didn't really understand why they were good, I think. And Ivy's really come out of that and done well.
Right, come on, Yiska, who's underrated, mate?
I mean, that sort of requires me to sift through the Reddit comments and let into my brain what other people think about Overwatch League players. I think generally, it is possible that maybe also by me that, for instance, someone like AimGod was undervalued, and in general, possibly Boston as a whole. But because if you look at someone like AimGod, who stepped in for Neko and maybe even performed a little bit better than him for the while he was there, even though, of course, he played less, so there was less variance to be expected from him. But yeah, I think AimGod has the possibility of being a top 3 then in the Overwatch League, just based on his mechanics, based on his positioning. I think that they are Boston. Ranking Boston low is problematic for reasons because they have too many star players still. The really, really bad teams in the Overwatch League just don't have one. Chengdu, for me, right? That is not true for Boston. It is absolutely possible that you find a meta where their star players luck out, and that is golden for them for half of a season, and they are at least mid-table.
Yeah, I think AimGod's a decent shout. I don't think he was on anybody's radar even last year when he was actually playing. Everyone was just like, oh, it's just Neko with another name or something, because the guy was still performing really well. And actually, they lost the majority of those games, and he still put up better stats than Neko did. And Neko was probably the 3rd best Zen of the season. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to see what he can do if that wasn't just a flash in the pan. I think another way to slice that as well is to maybe talk about Color Hex, because that's a guy whose VODs I've been watching over the last couple of days because I was really unaware of who he was. So in the sense that underrated means people aren't even aware of them to be able to rate them, I think Color Hex, who comes from New Zealand, played in Contenders Australia. I just kind of assumed off the bat that he would be a fairly underwhelming player because I wasn't really aware of any incredible flex DPS talents coming out from the Australian region. And because New Zealand doesn't even field at the World Cup, you expect the Australian World Cup team to be some of the best players from Contenders Australia. But guys like this guy and Hu Wu, another Kiwi player, have slipped under the radar for a lot of people because they're not even available at the World Cup because New Zealand as a whole is too shit. So when I've been watching Color Hex, he actually is a very intelligent player, and I think his Genji is very good. I think his Pharah performance has been good as well. He had some good performances on Hanzo and Junkrat as well, like classic staples of. But also Widowmaker. He's actually a really good Widowmaker player as well. So the fact that he can play a bunch of these different roles that guys like Architect or EQO, like people who are actually just really talented at the game and intelligent approach to the game as well. I think that if they get the right coaching, as long as Krusty wasn't just pulling all the strings behind the Boston Uprising, they could maybe, work some magic with this guy. I'm getting, it sounds terrible to say it like this, and I mean no offense to Color Hex. I don't want to tarnish his name in any sense, but I am getting kind of Dreamcasper vibes from Color Hex, in the sense that he's a Western player with a really large hero pool that is on Boston Uprising that they might be able to turn into a very good player. Now, I'm sure he never wants anyone saying Dreamcasper's name in relation to himself, but in terms of just the actual mechanics of the guy and what he's really good at, I think Boston have looked at what they were missing from last season, and thought, here's an upcoming player that we can potentially plug into that position. So if he's able to get anywhere close, he'll be nuts.
And by the way, for anyone who's wondering then what the context, like why you mentioned Dreamcasper, is because I know he has been unpersoned now, and we have like Stalin style gone back and deleted him from all the photos. He never was on the Boston Uprising. But I've said this many times, Striker was fucking amazing on Tracer, but like I always thought Dreamcasper was the best player on that team, because like he was clearly had all the intangibles, was a shot caller, he was so good at what he did, he was like absurdly good at the position he played. Like he made the team for me. Like he rounded it out and made them so dangerous. They were still good when he left, but you saw the decline was inevitable at that point in time. Pretty much, you could have never maintained that level of form with just a random player thrown in pretty much to replace him.
Yeah, and that's why I think Color Hex is a good pickup as well. And it also implies that there's been a lot of thought put into like what they were missing and what they wanted to pick up, which I like. And it implies that they really liked the decision they made the first time around, and it was working up until he turned out to be a piece of shit.
That's actually quite interesting then, because that actually does, by the way, add to the whole... I actually just thought when Hawk initially implied that he was going to be like the Bill Belichick of the fucking team, I thought he was just doing it to like just like crowbar the angle of like, we're working with the team that's the Patriots, and I'm just going to go with that angle. Yeah. But to be fair, and yeah, obviously the other angle is, just trying to blow up your own ego. But to be fair, some of the things he has done are actually exactly in line with what has made that particular coach famous. Like, for example, this is another quality. It's the idea that you don't go out and get the best player you can. You go out and get the player who you actually thinks does what you need in the game. And that might sometimes not be the best player, bizarrely, but as a result, you can get lineups where, when you look at the roster on paper, you're like, this team can't possibly compete, but then you see them actually in a game and they're very good. These pieces fit together, or they found some way to get more out of a person who can do something seemingly simple, but he can do it every time, let's say, as opposed to some guy with an insane skill ceiling, who people are trying to integrate into a system. There's a logic to that.
Yeah, and I think that is also one of my most interesting thought experiments for 2019 as well, is looking at the coaches that were paired in duos and we couldn't tell who was really doing what, and seeing how they work. And the big two duos for me are like they're four separate people now, Wizard Hyung and Pavane, to try and see like, was Wizard Hyung actually a genius, or was Pavane doing most of it? Is NYXL still going to be a boss even without Wizard Hyung? So I'm interested to see like how the Justice performs within the context of the pieces it has available. You're not going to expect them to go toe-to-toe with NYXL, and how NYXL does, but also Hook and Krusty. So how Boston Uprising does without Krusty, just with Hook, and how Krusty does with the San Francisco Shock. I think looking at the performance of these four coaches is going to be super interesting across 2019, to then apply that knowledge and look backwards and think perhaps where credit was misplaced, or what we should have expected coming into it, or what we should expect going into 2020 based on what we now know from these guys. Yeah.
For me also, like if we're on the topic of coaches, it's like, I think it bears repeating that there is this mystique around this Finnish guy called Saita, who was back in the day himself a professional player, was playing Takeover 1, I think, and then got into coaching. And if you just look at the list of players that Giganti under his coaching have gotten into the Overwatch League, it's actually quite impressive. Possibly, definitely the most successful, I think, in the West. But it can also hang with like, maybe not in quality, but certainly in quantity with teams like Metathena, KDP, like RCK, Cloudy, Ripper, and Masters just this season. And then last season, they had Fraggy, then Zappos, Big Goose, and Shaz, and Linkser. Right? These half of those are top performers in the Overwatch League. Now, if this guy selects players to play with him, maybe a little bit, limited by the budget, I still think someone like him rises to the occasion. He's someone like that. I think if he gets those better scrims from other teams, he can elevate a team past a certain point. And it's very interesting to see what happens there. Also, if we're talking about duos, we don't know what Demon did for Valiant. We were talking about these intangible factors, and that is not just Demon went away, but also Gunba, right? So there, once again, the question then becomes like, what kind of elements did they bring to those teams, and can they bring them to the new ones? And hopefully we'll have strong evidence for either of those cases. Hopefully that they're both pretty good, but like just to see what kind of caliber of coaches we're talking about, because especially someone like Demon is like probably as old as his players that he has in his roster, and he's the head coach, right? So
yeah, that is pretty nuts actually, that he's in that head coach position as well. Like, is it called the Peter principle or something? The idea of being promoted up to the point of incompetence. I hope it doesn't happen with him, but I fear that may be a thing with the management positions within Overwatch as well. Like if you're a player and then you end up not being a player, or you're like, you then move into coaching, and then you move into like head coaching, or then move into management and stuff. There's a point at which like your skills are best utilized. Yes. And from what I hear, Demon was a very good strategic coach as well. And so I wonder how much you can really apply to like, he was a really good strategic coach, but now he's moving into a position as a head coach. And I think he's planning to put more of those strategical ideas in the hands of Seta, of Kai, of these kind of guys. So how much then can you actually read back into what he was doing and what he'd be able to do in the future? I think they are quite different roles.
What about this one? I've got a one that's a bit more of like, it's a spitball one, but I'll give you my reasons why, and you can tell me what you think. So I was going to say Nene from the NYXL, with the logic being that, first of all, if people didn't watch Contenders, they're not going to know who he is because he came along too long at the end of career before Overwatch League started, so no one knows the guy. And then secondly, because obviously, I mean, this guy better be incredibly confident as a player, because the players he's behind in the list of DPS players is obviously ridiculous, because NYXL has like they've just hoarded all the best DPS players pretty much from Korea. So in theory, a lot of people might think he'll never get to play, and they might even think, has he just been brought up because he was on the academy team, is he actually going to do anything? But on the academy team, a few times I saw him play, looked fucking amazing, I have to say. Like, it's one of those players where, knowing Korean teams, where they don't seem to get too caught up in the idea of like, well, this guy is our star player and he's the big name, he has to play every game. I think Koreans tend to actually be pretty kind of pragmatic. Like, if they think someone in scrims actually is performing better, or better on this character and better in this particular meta, they will put you in, even if they're replacing some big name guy. So if he is indeed good enough, you may well see him in the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, Sabiobi got sacked for the Korean World Cup team, right? Which was kind of nuts that they would sit one of their best, one of their star players and play someone like Libero instead. So, yeah, I think they're open to doing that. But this team's got 5 DPS players on it. It's mad. And also, like, I forgot to crush any Flower fans' dreams as well when we were doing our dream crushing earlier. I think this guy's going to be washed, or may not even see play time.
Sideshow, being as Yiska, I noticed on this one, in fact, Yiska, at least he put his cards on the table. He did sort of imply at the beginning that like he doesn't allow the sewers of Reddit to pour into his mind, unfettered, and as a result, he actually doesn't know who people are overrating, or underrating. Well, one thing surely we can all do, because when you see enough fan comments, it's very easy to pick out the overrated players. So then maybe we just transition that Sideshow. Does Flower count for you? Because obviously there's going to be a guy out there. Funnily enough, it'll be the same guy who didn't watch Contenders and didn't watch Nene and the XL2 team himself. His brain basically has been stasis since just before the Overwatch League. He watched that Overwatch World Cup where Flower was popping off. He saw him a bit in, maybe in sort of like I Am Gyeonggi or something, and he's been waiting the whole time thinking naively, as soon as this Flower guy gets the NYXL, that's now when we're going to see it really pop off. They've been waiting for him the whole time. You disagree?
God bless that poor fan and all of his hopes and dreams, because I fear that he's going to be crushed under the weight of them and not know what to do with his life. I think Flower wasn't even seeing playtime on the XL2 team over Mangachu, right? And maybe he doesn't have respect for that team. Maybe he's not really putting in his full performance or whatever because he knows that he's just going to go to NYXL.
Medical issues.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I think he actually did have wrist issues.
Yeah, he did have surgery. That's what I heard.
Yeah, he had some surgery. But even then, he's behind so many people, and we haven't seen top quality play from him. And even when he was really highly rated, I was one of the people saying that I thought he was overrated at that point as well. I wasn't particularly impressed with his performance. I don't think this guy is going to be able to be an MVP performance, and I think Nene is a better shout for it on the NYXL. I would expect Nene to be a bigger name at the end of the season than Flower will be. I think Flower's just he's either competing with the Swiss Army knife intelligence of Libero if he wants to play stuff like the Genji or the projectile heroes, or if he tries to pick up the Widowmaker, he's competing with Pine, and the fact that both Pine and Flower play like this risky style that doesn't really mesh with how NYXL like to play anyway. They just kind of picked them up because they were pieces attached to the former team, and they are or have been star caliber players in the past, but that's not how NYXL play, like really flashy style. They tend to try and lock it down.
That is one of those things as well, where again, like we were talking about the Chinese region, etc. Obviously, the whole reason also why talent is spread out across the Chinese region is, remember, they aren't competing with each other. They're competing against each other. So obviously, I'm not going to be well, you've got most of the best players, so just take the last one and complete your super team and leave me with all the shit players. No, if I can get any of them, I do. Well, I have to say, NYXL has done a fucking amazing job of convincing some players who just logistically cannot be starters in every game to stay on their roster, who in a league with as many expansion teams as we now have, in a normal NBA, NFL type scenario, there is no universe in which Pine and Flower would potentially sit on the bench, while they hope to get into a game, and the person they're behind is the best in their role. You'd go
Arc as well.
Team,
Arc could be the second best player in his role after Animo, and he's just going to sit on the bench for, I don't know, maybe the whole season.
Yeah. If you think about what he should command as a buyout, as a guy that is a shot caller, the second best by eye test in his position, and can talk Korean in English. This is
as well.
It's like, how is this guy not commanding the highest buyout fees right now? Right?
Yeah. And they're doing some kind of wizardry in order to keep him on the team. I mean, also, it's got to be good for whenever you do want to be sold in the future to have the experience of playing alongside the best team. And NYXL have been kind of de facto the best team. If you're going to go anywhere else, you don't want to do a Janus and a Wizard Young where you end up on the Justice, despite the fact that you got a large amount of money in your pocket, because you're going to ruin your reputation for the next year if anything we've heard about the Justice ends up being true.
Unfortunately, Wizard Young, I'm just going to give you one piece of advice that I always give to people. Because, normally people present it like this Sideshow. It's well, in the short term, who wouldn't want a better salary, and you never know how long esports will last. So, get as much as you can. I always tell people this. That logic works if you only consider that logic. Because as soon as you think to yourself, the same logic, right? Because what's implied there is the money's going to be great to enjoy in the short term. So at least you get money even if you fail. And secondly, you might not play very long, right? Or you might not be in the game very long. The industry might not last very long. Well, the same exact logic surely implies first of all, you're going to spend the money eventually one day anyway. So when the money's gone, it can't help you anymore. That is only a short-term benefit. You're not getting paid 100 million and investing it in the companies. You're getting paid a little bit extra, and you're probably just going to buy better sneakers or something. No. So actually, the money angle's not as good as people imply. And the second part actually implies the opposite. If you're only going to be in the game a short time, a few years, rather than just get the most money you can and potentially be on a shit team, why not have a go on being one of the best teams and have an amazing fucking experience in your limited career? I've always gone that angle on it as well, because if you are Wizard Young, as soon as that money's spent, you're going to be looking back going, fuck, You know what? Maybe I should have just stayed on a better team or gone to another contender. Like, that's the other part that was crazy about that move for me. I thought he would be getting signed by like the Soul Dynasty or something. I thought that was the obvious transition for me if you were going to make the blockbuster trade.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, unless you're signing him as a head coach, though, he does seem like a very, is arrogant the right word? I mean, he definitely loves himself, right? And he's definitely incredibly confident.
I always have to remind myself, to some people that's a negative. Yeah.
That's true.
I just had to get myself in your headspace. Yeah, you're right, actually. That could be seen as obnoxious for an Sideshow. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. I'm not sure that like a lot of teams would really be able to handle that. So having him as a head coach does make sense. I think the problem was
you can only really get away with that if you're sort of the general manager of a team. Call back to an earlier joke from there. So you can see what I was doing there. I didn't explicitly name him, but what can I tell you?
But by the way, I think we started this point from just saying who's overrated, and I can't let that opportunity pass. So I will say, even though I try to not consume as much, so I don't know what people rate them, I'm sure people overrate Muma. So let's go on that.
Oh, of course. I'll just say this, Yiska, as someone who obviously didn't watch every game of the Overwatch League, but also did heavily rely upon reading as much coverage as I could, all this sort of stuff, like to point me in the directions that if I had like a sense for something, I could say, like, is there anything to it, because I can't watch 50 games and find out. I will say that if you were someone who didn't watch any of the Overwatch League and you had only read coverage and tweets and like fan opinions, it would go like this. Muma exists in a quantum super state where he is only the best Westerner or just not mentioned. And normally not being mentioned means your stock goes down and people don't think he's good. No, that's the genius. When he didn't do well or he actually just played badly, they just wouldn't mention that he did badly. He didn't seem to ever get flamed. Now, obviously, you could speculate other things, like, to be fair, with the whole thing with him and XQC, I'm sure people are very worried that they're going to flame someone who's a gay person in the league. There might be consideration like that. He's obviously a very popular player as well. It's another reason why you can add in the fact that I know from other games, TSM, that if you have a really obnoxious fan base that supports a player, it actually does do a good job of being a deterrent, Like the Outlaw fans, they can do a pretty good job of making you not want to be the guy who volunteers the idea that you think they're maybe overrated or something, Like no one's gonna do that. So as long as they're not terrible, like I only think the Fuel got it as much because they were terrible. Like if they'd have been able to stay around where Outlaws was, they would have been fine. They'd have coasted, So Muma, in the context that people were at one point in time saying he was a contender for best tank in the whole league, seems reasonable, right? That he could be an overrated player.
Okay, I'm gonna give my opinion here because I do actually think I was one of the people that was saying at one point in time towards the end of stage 1, I thought that Muma was playing some of the most intelligent tank play that we'd seen in the league. So I had him up there with guys like, at that time I think it was Gesture and was it Mano? Maybe, something like that. And I had Muma alongside him. And after stage 2, he basically just slipped right out of there. And at that point, didn't even bear mentioning because it was that far down. But the reason that I had him that high up is because I think the meta that they were playing in stage 1, where they had like this, they were playing this weird like anti-dive style. So they played with a Junkrat and a Widowmaker and they forced the enemy team to dive onto them. And then Muma would come around and flank and was really doing it on his own because they didn't have like a tracer player. Like a lot of other teams would try and bait you into diving on them, then go with their main tank and their tracer. But Muma's just on his own. So he was making these flanks and using his Primal Rage really well and getting a lot of value out of it.
Ignore the opportunity to make any jokes about the tracer player of the Outlaws. Continue with the analogy, please.
Exactly. And so I thought that Muma was doing really well then. Now the problem was when they tried to play dive, when they tried to play any other style that wasn't that solo flanking style, when they tried to have any coordination with Muma's play at all, it really seemed to break apart for Houston. I think that for me, his stock massively went down. But the weird thing about it was the stock went from one meta where it was like, wow, this guy's like a top 5 tank in the league, definitely, I think, at the end of stage 1, to stage 2, I was like, oh lordy. And then stage 3 and 4, I was like, I'm not even referring to you anymore. Like, you're not even in my conversation of top 10 main tanks. They would all be Korean. Like, you legitimately might even still be the best Western main tank, and you're not even in the discussion. Yeah. Because who else is there for best Western main tank? Like Super? I think they're on a pretty similar level, honestly. Like there isn't really anybody else. Yeah, like Fraggy. Like there is no Western main tank. They do not exist. So I think the weird thing about Muma is if anyone ever brings up like, oh, best Western players on the main tank position, you have to say his name. But really, there are no good Western main tanks unless Muma's playing that one like specific style that worked really well for him.
I feel like
they're all Koreans.
This entire season is going to be a nightmare for Houston Outlaws. It's not that they were bad last season. Like 7th place was respectable. They almost made it into playoffs and everything.
If you look at the stages, making some stage playoffs, obviously very legit shit, yeah.
Yeah. The problem is literally the cut-off above, so playoff places, is where I feel like by not improving, and I don't think Dabin is a significant improvement for Outlaws. Dante, of course. In comparison to how other teams like the Shock upgraded, you are, by maintaining the level that you had last season, you are only falling so many spots because a lot of these expansion teams that are coming in already have a higher level than you did last season. And just by adding Dante, I don't think you're gaining many places or should be gaining many places on the power rankings list.
Though, actually, for last season, just as an aside, actually Dante wouldn't be a bad shout for an underrated player because you remember how bad Shock was at the beginning, and the whole concept of Shock was like, it's okay, we're waiting for all these really good players to join. And actually, considering he was a placeholder player, Dante was pretty good in those first couple of stages at times. Like, he was amazingly good at times. And obviously, when Brigitte and stuff came out, and he was a very competent player.
He seems to be able to pick up heroes very quickly, and I think he's pretty intelligent. The problem is, again, like it's not exactly the same situation as Fleta, but it's the same problem. It's just so many other really talented players have come into the league that he's now just drowning in other people's ability. I would struggle to see him get his head above the water and really make a name for himself next season, because you're now competing against at least 70 DPS players, I would imagine, that there are in the league with 20 teams. Maybe not quite. Maybe there's only something like 60, an average of 3 per team.
Aside from the 4 or 5 that the NYXL just has to have for some reason.
Yeah, exactly. But so for Dante, he was like fairly underrated in 2018, probably. But I don't think that makes him a really good pickup for 2019. And I think you have to be aspiring more with the rest of your roster, because you're not. Let's be real, Outlaws, even Outlaws fans, come on now. You are not NYXL, you're not London Spitfire. You don't have the best players at every position possible. You could have made upgrades across the board.
Yes.
You didn't.
Right, Yiska, if we're going to just go around the fucking houses and we're going to do Flower, we're going to do Muma, we're basically just hurting people's feelings now. I feel like now is my room to step forwards. Okay, so you ready? I'm going to hurt some feelings of some people who are fans of Korean players and go ahead and say, I'm putting top of that fucking list Birdring from the London Spitfire.
Yeah.
Because everyone in their brain has embedded in it, first of all, back in the day when he used to play for Kongdu, etc. What a sick player, right?
Yeah.
And then you also got to add in Stage 1 playoffs. Birdring going fucking ham was a massive part of why they were able to win that. Like, this is all looking so sick. But you know what? When London Spitfire was at its worst, I'll give you that. I do think Profit got unfairly tarred at times. He was still very good at times. It just couldn't win because the team was so bad. Birdring wasn't fucking helping, put it that way.
Yeah.
That guy was a fucking albatross around Profit's at times. Like,
it's
I get why he's a perfect player to get overrated, because the ceiling can be crazy. The problem is the fucking basement is crazy as well. Like, I can't think of many players with as high a ceiling but as low a basement. It's nuts.
Yeah, grace the excuses of wrist injuries that somehow always work, seemingly. The problem is with him, it's like, he has the crazy highs. I'm not sure if you can say when they happen, and that is a problem. Like a player that has crazy highs like a Pine, and you can say, and he can tell you on this day, or like the week before you see his form, and then you see it coming down, you go like, maybe I get in my consistent player instead. That is dope if you have the consistent player, and if you can see that happening. I think Birdring just drops off a cliff like the day he steps out onto the stage just to see how he performs. It's legitimately, and that pains me to say, right? But there was a time during the season of London where it was the right coaching decision to start Hureg over Birdring. And if that is the case, we're talking bot level of proficiency. I don't know what was happening there. it was soft throwing to play him. So I don't know if that is something that is internally handleable and very transparent to the staff there, and they can control that, even though Birdring has always been a streaky player in his career, I would argue, and has always had these drop-off issues also, ironically, in situations where you don't want to have it, such as Apex Finals. So, I think that people brought him up as an MVP candidate is ridiculous. I would say he was possibly the worst player on the starting roster of London Spitfire last season.
An LVP candidate.
Yeah.
The least valuable player on the
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the people that they actually kept, I would agree. But the weird thing is, maybe I just can't get this Birdring like bias out of my head.
Here we go. Come on.
When the team is playing fairly well, Birdring is a very good like secondary DPS player alongside alongside Prophet. And the stage 1 finals really good. When the team sorted their shit out and they were on that mad playoff run, it was not like Birdring was underperforming then.
I will just say,
Birdring and Prophet outperformed EQO and Carpe.
Just as kind of like a lawyer, just saying like, Your Honor, earlier he argued, like, I will just say earlier on when you were bigging up Carpe and EQO, you were saying about what a sick duo they are. You didn't mention Prophet and Birdring. So
no, I didn't.
I'm just saying, that context does exist in this VOD. I'm just saying.
It's true. It's true. I don't think they're as good a duo as them, and I do think that Birdring's massively let down. The problem is, I don't think that Birdring is going to be like that bad all throughout 2019. But again, maybe this is just the bias in my head. Maybe I just can't separate the performances that I've seen from him in the past, and don't. For whatever reason, like I don't view him as a player that's going to be washed up in 2019. But I don't know why I don't believe that. There's nothing really, apart from the fact that he's been able to return to those peaks. There's no consistency about his performance. I just think that if the rest of London are doing well, they'll be able to make enough space for Birdring to be able to go off. I think when London was playing badly, I don't think Birdring could do anything. But if London are playing really well, I'm expecting Birdring to do something. Now, I could be totally wrong there.
I mean, I'm
worried because Guard isn't a good replacement for him either.
Well, put it this way. Let me ask you this. Let me just see how far gone you actually are, Sideshow. This is going to be the barometer, like the temperature. Like at this point, right, I'm going to have to really check. So I'm going to have to put the thermometer in the anus where French people keep informing me that it's 1% more accurate, something like 1 degree. It's like there's a Louis C.K. joke like that, which is just like, just fucking add 1. Like, don't let me like burn your arm. Like, is that necessary? But okay. So this is the real question that tests whether or not you believe what you just said. Who is the better secondary DPS Sideshow, Birdring or Soon?
The better.
I'll put him against a non-Korean there, homie.
Yeah.
It's terrible. He doesn't know which way to go. He could go either way on this one.
I mean, frankly, the idea that I can't decide on Birdring or Soon,
it's not a great sign, is it?
No, exactly. And I think I would probably, over the course of the entirety of 2018, I would go for Soon as well. So, yeah, what does that say? I think Birdring has higher peaks, but he's always had higher peaks. So there's not really an argument in his favor, is it?
I think what it says is that you're breaking Monty's sleep hypnosis that he's working on you, because I remember Monty was very high on Birdring as well, and I was mildly triggered by that.
I will say, by the way, just as an aside, because I don't think this is like speaking out of school to say, I will say, considering Monty is someone who actually also is known for having a pretty good memory, like he'd often reel off a lot of the results that people had or like famous games that they played in and stuff. The downside of that is I notice sometimes I think that actually colours his analysis too much. Like, he is a guy where if someone has an amazing pop-off game and they're a Korean, he might remember that too vividly and let it inform his analysis of what they then later do, Whereas like when you're trying to do like overall player evaluation, this is one of the reasons why when I alluded earlier to how in Counter-Strike, unlike Overwatch, I could watch all the POVs of the player. One of the things I used to purposely do, when I said that line of like, if you just give me the right 10 demos, that's the key. Is that I didn't go and get the 10 best demos. I used to actually purposely do it. Like, I'll get a couple where they get like the most frags. I'll get a couple where they do really badly. I'll have a couple against like, their main rival, a couple against like a shit team. And I would try and get like a sense of the overall, like, what's like what's the spectrum of performance and what's like more, like, for example, if he pops off in 2 games, but he's shitting off in 4, you have to kind of like level that out eventually and aggregate it. You can't just be like, well, if it was only the great game, because if you do that, there's a lot of players suddenly become way better at Overwatch that actually just aren't as good. Not least because it unfortunately gives you a natural bias to people who have very high ceilings. Which, to be fair, was the whole London Spitfire team for most of the year. Everyone, the sad thing is, though, that narrative, because in the end it turned out to be right, has probably ruined people because they spent the whole year going, can't count out that London Spitfire team. It's like, well, but you can though. They're terrible. Look, they're not doing anything. No, but you can't count them out though because the ceiling. If they were to ever hit the ceiling, it's like I think the best thing that could happen to Overwatch is that they didn't have that playoff run. Because when they had that playoff run, that's probably why some little cunt out there is like, I still believe, Jaehong. When are you coming back, Lord? Never. It's never happening. He ain't walking through that door.
No. That's nuts, though, because the two teams that actually made the finals were the two teams where we were saying that.
The potential teams, yeah.
It is. Yeah. It's the teams that just had that potential, that had the star power and the potential. And actually, Carpe and EQO kind of sucked in the finals as well. So they underperformed when it really mattered, but managed to get them all the way to the finals. I don't know.
All right.
It's weird.
I know. I've got a good last one we can do then. Here's the last hypothetical, because again, it is just naturally being presented by the discussion. It's this. Which player in the Overwatch League has the most potential to be really good? So it's someone where there's something about them or their history or whatever, and like if things went right, this is the season they can just go fucking ham and show us what a sick player they are.
That's an interesting one. I think
just any player.
Yeah, anyone.
Okay.
Can even be original Overwatch League player if you want. So if you thought someone was on the wrong team in season... Like, that's actually the reason why, by the way, I actually alluded to Soon earlier, because I actually think that one of the reasons I rate him fairly highly is he was still... First of all, he was still pretty good on Valiant. Like, he had some very good games. But I also thought Valiant, to me, didn't look like the right sort of team for him at all. Like, they looked like I would want him on... I would have wanted him on, like, the fucking Shock or something. Like, that's where you could see this guy go ham. So that's why, for me, he's a player where, who knows, maybe he could be better this year. This might be the right team for him. I don't know. Like, that's the lineup's a little bit questionable, but we'll see on that. I mean, is there anyone along these lines?
There's a few people that we've mentioned before, guys like Striker or Architect, that I think have big potential. But someone that we haven't said at all and might come out of left field for some people is Ding from the Shanghai Dragons, which is a weird one that I'm even mentioning. Mm-hmm. But I think the guy has potential. He has an incredible Pharah. And he's got a really good Hanzo, and he's got like a good Junkrat, and I think he's got an okay Genji, but I can't really remember. I've seen him on Genji that often. But the ability of some of his heroes hints that, and to put that in context, he's been playing on Kongdu Panthera in Korean Contenders, where quite a bit of the time he was forced to play D.Va for the team. And he's not really a D.Va player, and I hope he doesn't get played as a D.Va player this season as well. But if you really unleash his potential as a DPS, I think this guy could do some really impressive things and be considered maybe one of the best at some like specific roles. Like people might think of him as the best Pharah or the best Hanzo. They might not think of him as the best player or like somebody that they would have as an MVP. But he's got potential to make waves, and I don't think most people would anticipate that coming out from him, because he is, even when people discuss the team now, they think of him as like a guy that might play D.Va over Geggery or something, and I'm like, no, that is not going to happen. I hope not, unless the Shanghai Dragons coaching staff are mental. But Ding is someone with a bunch of potential on DPS that might see it actualized in Shanghai.
Yeah, it will be very interesting to see him just hopefully slimming down his hero pool, because D.Va is honestly a little bit dire most of the time.
Yeah, it's not good.
It is an interesting idea to, like, depending on where the meta goes, and I had this feeling for a while, that it is possible that maybe the flex tank position needs to start playing more DPS in general. And we will see where this goes, depending on the 3 DPS metas. Because I think there is value in having consistent players on your team that aren't the specialists that are sitting out, if you get what I mean. Like if you have 3 DPS players and this is 3 DPS meta, 3 DPS meta still doesn't mean you play 100% 3 DPS on every single map and you don't switch that off. I think there's a lot of flex potential there, but still, I mean, Ding sort of reminds almost like Nico, where we had that back in the day with Rogue, right? Yeah. Where he played D.Va and Genji as well. But
yeah, I think Nico's
back
probably
now, baby. Paris Eternal.
Yeah, I think Nico's probably better on D.Va, but worse at the DPS heroes, but is like a better mix of the two. Like he's better at that role where he flexes between everything because he can play the D.Va pretty well and he's like a pretty good DPS player. But I think Ding, like putting him on D.Va is just a throw.
Okay, I gotta say at least one name that we haven't brought up, and I genuinely believe that he could be an insane solo player where we still might not see the team do very, very well, but where we can all agree that he is pretty nuts in the context of the Overwatch League, and I think it's Erster. So, Erster, Atlanta Reign, formerly of LFZ, playing in China, winning pretty much every single time he participated in that Contenders region, comes over now to Atlanta Reign, and the rumor on the street was that not a lot of Korean teams scrimmed or trialed him because he's a little bit of a bad boy, which in itself is interesting if you look at the yes,
because sexy way, Yiska.
Yeah,
he's a bit of a bad boy.
I mean that team in itself, it's like on the one hand,
Suicide Squad type scenario.
On the one hand, you have Masa, who's banned for like bad conduct online. Then you have Defran. I don't think you need to say anything more. Then you have Erster, who has that reputation. On the other hand, you have Kodak, who's like the nicest kid in the Overwatch League. It's like, okay, we legitimately, like, that Phoenix is actually not in Phoenix. It's the hybrid between the devil and an angel or something. And that's what it should showcase. But yeah, I think Poco, Daco certainly are a good front line. I'm not sure if they are a super good front line, but probably enough to provide valuable space for a player like Erster.
Yeah.
And the interesting part then, of course, this is just pure wildcard. It's also Defran, because once again, like we said in an earlier discussion, Defran's, even if Tracer and Soldier aren't meta, that still doesn't rule out Defran. It depends if this guy, if it is really genuinely just like the tracking heroes that he can play, or if it's just he can play whatever is meta and is required of him and he can grind into. We don't know that yet. We haven't seen him fail at a pick yet. So it is interesting to see what this team can do. There's also some, I think Nalian will have to play at some point in the season, probably. I'm not sure. Maybe Defran and Esther are starting. I'm hearing that Defran is running that team now. And that from the gameplay that they're playing, it is very apparent that he's the focus of the team. Now, how does that sit with Erster? It's an interesting situation, but yeah, if there is a meta where, for instance, Genji comes along, or we get into dive, I would say, I think Erster would be nuts as a player. And while he is he doesn't give me those Fleta, those Prophet vibes, because he's different. He's almost more like Carpe, I would say, than he is Fleta or Prophet.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think the whole team of Atlanta is chock full of potential. I think it's probably the team that I've rated the least correctly, because I don't think they can properly be rated. They've got so much talent on paper that could be actualized and might end up being like a sick playoff caliber squad. But they've also got a bunch of problems, like their coaching staff isn't particularly well known or hasn't had much success in the past, and they have to deal with the language barrier, which is presumably going to be quite a large issue because their Koreans can't speak English very well. But they do have like a coach, and then they've also got the potential of these bad boys having meltdowns. Sure. Like, can you imagine like Defran just flips out, refuses to play, Erster's trolling some guy,
themselves, suspended.
Yeah, just getting suspended and banned.
XQC thing. Yeah,
exactly. So like, could definitely happen. I think there's three other people that I think have mad potential though for next season that people aren't thinking about as players with potential perhaps. One is Happy, because this guy's Widowmaker is just bananas, and I don't know whether he's got many other heroes that he can perform to that level on, but he could be another guy like maybe like Sire player even. Like I think that's like the lowest level is like a Sire player Pine, where he'd be brought on as like a Widowmaker specialist. Like he might have a bunch of other stuff that he's really good at as well. So he could be massive for the Guangzhou charge. And then two that are a little bit more out of left field. One is Sado. I think because Sado only had one stage to play, and he was so highly anticipated by, like, he'd performed so well in trials, his stats were crazy in scrims that they were playing, the B team was playing really well with him and stuff, and they were like challenging some other Owl teams. And then he comes in for only one stage, and he's like playing Orisa for half of it as well. And the team wasn't really synced up to play alongside him, and he like played alongside Hopper for the beginning of that stage, and then transitioned over to Poco. Now that they've had the off season and will have a whole season to play alongside this guy, we might end up having him in the conversation for one of the best main tanks in the entire game, which he's not in the conversation for at the moment, even though there was this hype around him coming into it. So I think he's got potential to really prove himself, and he's a little bit of a known quantity. So for someone with a bit of a known quantity to still have that much potential is interesting.
For Sado, it's very interesting. Like in the stats community that had like metrics for Korean trials and stuff like that, there was always a main tank where nobody knew the name because it was Korean letterings, and then he just disappeared and from those scrims, and we thought, maybe just a very, very talented kids with nuts numbers that just gave up or whatever. Turns out that's Sado. So Sado was what was statistically like this prodigy on both Ryan and Winston, by the way. And it's very interesting to see what he can do if he's playing the entire thing. I also think it really hurt him how bad Hotbar was when he was his designated frontline partner, which he should have practiced with or functioned with during the time he was banned, so they could develop a synergy. Sure. Having Hotbar being so underwhelming, and certainly worse than Poco, was probably something that put them behind quite a bit. If they made that decision earlier and put Poco and Sado together, I wonder what that looks like, right? But in general, I think it's also fair to say that Sado seemed to be affected by stage fright a little bit, at least in the playoffs and certainly in the finals. It will be interesting to see what this growth potential is like, because while he is displayed as this nefarious character that ran like 16 boosting services and like
I always have to remind myself that's also considered something that's a negative. I just see an entrepreneur, guys, an outlaw, the Wild West, kind of people who built America,
to be fair, you have to be absolutely nuts to be able to boost people on main tank like that consistently, that often to like that kind of level. So that speaks to something of his individual skill.
I'll also add in as well, to be fair, if we're picking people who obviously have insane potential, if you are a fucking main tank, I think you'd like to have Carpe and Eco on your team. Like, you have a chance to look very good if you play well in this game. It's not like one of those teams where you play super well and then you like when Fisher first joined Gladiators. It's like, can someone do something, please? Help! Like, I can't do it all. Someone has to actually kill people.
Yeah.
Definitely room for a lot of success could happen there. In fact, actually, the thing about the Fusion team is they actually have such a high sort of like aggregate level of player across their team. Bear in mind they don't have many Koreans. Like, I think it's funny. Everyone bigs up obviously the Boston team for their scouting, etc. I think the next team you have to credit's fucking Fusion when you look at the players they got in. They did a great job the whole season.
Yeah, they did.
Also with their academy team, they are nuts in scouting. Like Ikkyo is. Like if Ikkyo could have played the entire season, I'm not sure we're talking much differently about him than Joe. Like maybe a little bit lower, but like this guy came out of nowhere, literally tier 3, losing like 4th round go for Overwatch tournaments with his Israeli team. Right, he was basically no one before the World Cup hit.
He's basically the nightmare for all narrative fans of esports, because now every little scrub out there is like, oh, it's all just politics, If I could get a team, I'd do that. So it's like, you wouldn't, but unfortunately, this guy has made you believe that. Yes, he is in the Disney movie version.
Yeah. When you talk to EQO, you can tell that he's like a special player. He's got a very intelligent view of the game, and he's a very bright kid that's also super mechanically talented. He knows like what everybody should be doing at all times, which helps him then be able to do stuff. So the idea that you could pick anybody up and be able to do that is I think, mental. But you might be able to pick up people like, for example, Color Hex. I tweeted out, Color Hex gives me EQO kind of vibes, because I didn't want to attach his name to Dreamcasper at the time.
Right, I see. But I'm sure he thanks you for that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a similar kind of thing, right? That like a bunch of these different flex DPS players were found on worse teams where they weren't able to do well, but they've kind of seen that they're mechanically really good and intelligent enough to learn, and then intelligent enough sometimes to be able to lead their teams as well. And those players just don't seem to have a ceiling. Yeah.
Plus, I mean, surely if when you talk about someone like EQO, and this is obviously a thing that he shared with Dreamcasper as well, is like the champion pool is ridiculous. A hero pool,
Yeah.
like they are playing more things than that role should even play.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I will
it's crazy.
also say it's legitimately possible that Neptuno was the best Western player last season. Like, just in terms of...
It's the only person I saw play Mercy that actually looked like he was doing things that other people weren't doing.
Yeah.
That's pretty good in itself, Alf, right? Because the whole joke of that particular hero, there's heroes like this in all MOBA games as well, is it doesn't matter how good you are and the hero people think isn't skilled. Like, it's impossible to differentiate yourself. That's the problem, because everyone just goes, well, anyone could do that. It's like, he actually looked very legit just himself when he was playing Mercy.
Yeah. And
he was really talented.
I mean, that is then also just impeccable scouting. Like, if you think of how that worked, like, he was on what was the
Movistar Riders, maybe?
Movistar, yeah. He was on Movistar, and there, like, the rumors were, he's only there because he's like the Spanish guy and he keeps the organization around. If he wasn't there, like, he's so unreliable on Lucio. Then he gets picked up by Cloud9, who keep him warm for a while.
Before they got the Korean teams, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
You remember that? You remember everyone like, great news, I've been picked up by Cloud9. I can't wait for the Overwatch League to start. It's like, we've announced, we've just signed a Korean team. Oh, that's probably me. Fuck them. A second Korean team also. Well, what's going on in Contenders? Like, depressing, wasn't it?
Yeah, and the point of the story basically is Neptuno wasn't some standout talent that Fusion just had to pick up because they have a better bankroll. Like, I did an interview with him. 2 people even replied to his tryout requests. It was Boston and Philly. And Boston, after the first tryout, said, and then only Fusion gave him a tryout, and he keep going through the process. And then, for my money, the best Western player on his position, certainly.
Right, well, on the basis of that one detail alone, I award Fusion the better scouting team, not least because I saw the actual players that they had at support on the Boston Uprising. Not one of my favourite parts of their lineup, put it that way.
Very true, yeah.
Yeah, true. Neptuno's much better than Kellex, I think.
Imagine if they could have had him on that team, Neptuno on the fucking Boston Uprising.
No, it would have been huge. And also, I think Fusion were the last team to actually sign their players. So if you consider the scouting that they were able to do with the fact that everyone on the else had already been picked up, I mean, that's nuts. That's so talented. And they've done a similar
that
thing.
That is wild when you think
team.
about it. Like, I mean, obviously, to be fair, part of it was they did get a lot of European players that weren't being considered by, because, people in NA were either getting NA players or Koreans, basically. So they had sort of their own niche, their own strategy there. But I will say that if you put it that way, they actually, I was joking before, in some ways they should win the best scouting then, because you would think from their lineup, if you didn't know anything about the context of the industry, that they picked first, that they got one of their lineups first, because they had so many good players, but if they picked at the end, they're even more fucking genius.
Yeah, it really was.
I will say, though, the fact that they were so late to the party and still got Carpe makes everyone wrong. Like, everyone who didn't pick him up.
There's a few examples like that, right, in sports history where, like, there's some, like, God-tier quarterback and, like, 20 teams passed on him. And they always famously say, like, what the fuck were those 20 people thinking? You do wonder at some of the people who did get picked up in the Overwatch League who was just like, this Carpe guy, not really buying it myself. Bit meh to me. What's that? Agilities? Get him on the team now. Sign him. Give him a signing bonus. Like, come on, man. What are we doing here? What is this shit?
Yeah, no, that was mental. I think he was part of FaZe at the time, and maybe FaZe had some agreement earlier on with Philly because they picked up the FaZe DPS duo, Carpe and Shadowburn, and then they had Joe Meister as well. So they used that as a core. So that may have been in place beforehand. I don't know whether everyone necessarily skipped Carpe.
I will say I would employ Joe Meister to not play a single second of professional Overwatch to get Carpe along. I think that's a fair deal. Yeah.
Well, listen, we're a package deal. Well, I mean, he did technically say he has to play. Yay, we'll sign you all. Yes. Also, I do like that angle as well. Like, I like to also imagine, like, the players that's input and Carpe and Shadowburn. Like, listen, we were the best parts about that team. If we just stick together and agree to always stay as a duo. He goes here, actually. Fuck off, Shadowburn. don't need you anymore, mate, actually. It was nice knowing you, but, we're moving in different directions now, buddy. You've got to go elsewhere. Like, I actually like people who do use the fucking Dragon Blade.
Yeah, use Dragon Blade occasionally. Yeah. There's another player, actually, that could be in the...
Shadowburn?
Yeah, in the
He's got the
wash
team
category.
for it now, right? I mean, I've put it.
No, I
obviously-
mean,
Wait,
in the wash
category?
category.
A wash, yeah.
Overrated,
Washed up.
right?
Yeah, overrated. Like, I think a lot of fans might have been listening to that segment and be like, "Yo, Shadowburn, he's actually getting playtime now. Like, this guy could end up being the best." I think he's past his prime. I think he's still got a really good fire. I think his Genji isn't like how you play Genji anymore, and I think he doesn't really have that many other heroes. So, I think it might be the end of days for Shadowburn being considered a real top tier talent.
I agree with that. I wonder
And
if
to
he's
be
even
fair-
the best Genji on this team.
You also do have to add in like he had that factor going for him, which if you noticed, I've alluded to this context earlier, which is like one of the most misleading aspects is when a player looks really good on a team that's not as good, or they're bad, etc., or they have some like extenuating circumstances. So like an obvious example I would give would be if someone saw Sire player on Florida Mayhem, they'd be like, "Oh, what a poor guy, you know, he's trapped on this team, like he's fucking amazing, they're all shit." It's like, I agree, in that context he looked amazing, but the difference is if I took him and threw him straight on NYXL, would he be a godlike player? I don't know, actually. If you gave him all the resources and he had no excuses left, I would probably evaluate him differently. So, to be fair, a lot of Shadowburn's hype was always like, look how good he is on like 120 ping. It's like, we're on land now, aren't we? Like, I know what you mean. Like that, it was amazing what he was able to do in those fucking games where you play from Europe. Like that was unbelievable. But that doesn't really have any bearing on everyone being on 8 ping on land, does it? Like,
Yeah, it's true.
it's not relevant.
He's just one of those players that seems to not have kept up with the pack that's improved alongside him. You know, guys like Miro or Jaehong or Toby, these kind of people.
True.
Previous legends, you will always have a place in the history book. Just maybe not a place on the starting roster of Paris.
Yeah.
See, if you make history, one day eventually you become history. Not bad. And to be fair, there's a lot of fucking teams out there in the Overwatch League could use that as the subtitle of their team. Maybe Soul Dynasty. There you go. That's a fucking... I think we'll just end on that banger.
That's brutal.
So, yeah, I know. Soul Dynasty, you either make history, eventually you become history, of course. See you, Jaehong. This video was kindly supported by Dean Tanglis, Andreas Snazore Westerlund, Gardner Wilson, OllieJ, Tobias Bernasconi, NateDOhDoubleG, James Harding, Kyla Harris, Travis Greb, Daniel Yordanov, Tristan Jones, and a special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for upcoming content of mine? Perhaps you'd like to ask me a question for my monthly video AMA. Do you want some teasers to see who the next guests are for my talk shows, for my interviews? Maybe you'd like to take part in a monthly esports discussion with yours truly. Well, put your money where your mouth is at the Patreon link in the description box below and join the Scrilluminati today.